In one of the first studies of Iraqi public opinion after the U.S.-led invasion of March 2003, the polling firm Gallup asked Iraqis their thoughts on the Bush administration's motives for going to war. 1% of Iraqis said they believed the motive was to establish democracy. Slightly more, 5%, said to assist the Iraqi people. But far in the lead was the answer they got, 43%, quote, to rob Iraq's oil. Well, with the 4-year mark of the Iraq War less than a month away, the answer may come into clearer view. After a long negotiation process involving U.S. officials, the Iraqi government is considering a new oil law that would establish a framework for managing the third largest oil reserves in the world. What would this new law mean for Iraq? Well, with me now in Washington is Ed Girar. He is the Iraq Project Director for Global Exchange, and he's obtained a copy of the proposed oil law, which he translated from Arabic and posted on his website, raedinthemiddle.blogspot.com. Antonia Yuhas is also with us on the telephone. She's written extensively about the economic side of the U.S. occupation of Iraq and is author of the book, The Bush Agenda, Invading the World One Economy at a Time. Antonia is currently a Tarbell Fellow at Oil Change International. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Ed Girar, first, how did you get this document?
The document was leaked by Professor Fuad Al-Amir and published on a website called al-ghad, al-ghad.org. There are different copies of it. Some of it are scanned and others are the original document, but it just hit the internet last week.
And explain what it says now that you've finished translating it.
There are 3 major points that I think we should talk about. Financially, it legalizes very unfair types of contracts that will put Iraq in very long-term contracts that can go up to 35 years. And the second point is concerning Iraq's sovereignty. Iraq will not be capable of controlling the levels, the limits of production, which means that Iraq cannot be a part of OPEC anymore. And Iraq will have this very complicated institution called the Federal Oil and Gas Council that will have representatives from the foreign oil companies on the board of it. So representatives from, let's say, ExxonMobil and Shell and British Petroleum will be on the federal board of Iraq approving their own contracts. And the third point is the point about keeping Iraq's unity. The law authorizes all of the regional and small provinces authorities. It will give them the final say to deal with the oil instead of giving this final say to the central federal government. So it will open the doors for splitting Iraq into 3 regions or even maybe 3 states in the very near future.
Antonia Yuhas, what is the significance of this for Western oil companies?
The law certainly opens the door to U.S. oil companies and the Bush administration winning a very large piece of their objective of going to war in Iraq, at least winning it on paper. The law does almost word for word what was laid out in the Baker-Hamilton recommendations to turn Iraq's nationalized oil system, the model that 90% of the world's oil is governed by, take its nationalized oil system and turn it into a commercial system fully open to foreign corporate investment on terms as of yet to be decided. Basically, every level of the oil industry will be opened to private foreign companies. And as Raed said, it introduces this very unique model, which is that ultimate decision-making on contracts rests with a new council to be set up in Iraq. And sitting on that council will be representatives, executives, in fact, of oil companies, both foreign and domestic. And this council, the new Oil and Gas Council, is going to be the decision-making body to determine what kind of contract the Iraqis can sign. And all contract models are still on the table, yet to be determined. I think that's left vague or open so that the very necessary criticism to earlier drafts of the law, which included specifically production sharing agreements, might be quieted. But the law definitely sets up a very dangerous setup for Iraq's future economic stability, economic development, and certainly sets the stage for a tremendous amount of increased hostility and violence to U.S. soldiers positioned on the ground as being seen as the implementers of this oil hijack.
No one in Iraq knows about the law. The law has been kept in a very low profile, and there is a huge propaganda campaign by the government trying to portray the law as great and good for Iraq and good for a law that will turn Iraq into heaven on earth because it will bring all of the foreign investments. Even parliamentarians in the Iraqi government, the ones who will have the final say to pass this law, haven't received a copy of this law yet. I sent them the copy 3 or 4 days ago.
Finally, Antonia, who has the largest oil reserves in the world, the top 3?
Saudi Arabia is 1, Iraq is 2, Iran is 3, and I think in that list, particularly obviously Iraq and Iran, you can see pretty clearly a key focus for the Bush administration and its remaining years in office. But controlling the second and third largest oil reserves in the world also has a tremendous amount to do with imperial power and global power that the Bush administration wants. Controlling that oil denies it to other countries that want it, like China and India, countries that the Bush administration now sees itself in rivalry to. We have to pull back this curtain over that 3-letter word oil and expose this agenda. Corporate and oil interests are part and parcel to government interests, and I definitely think that if we in the United States want to end the war in Iraq and want to prevent another war in Iran, the 4-year anniversary of the war coming up March 19th is a critically important opportunity to do that, and in the lead up to that anniversary, to really target our attention on demanding that our members of Congress defund the war, and that we direct our attention and our protest energy on revealing this oil agenda.
Antonia, you also want to thank you for being with us. Torbell Fellow at the Oil Change International, author of The Bush Agenda, Invading the World One Economy at a Time, and Raed Jarrar in Washington, D.C., is the Iraq Project Director for Global Exchange. His blog is raedinthemiddle.blogspot.com.